Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy Heavens, and welcome to another episode of CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. In each episode, we dive headfirst into the world of marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the roller coaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we are not just talking about challenges. We are tackling them head on. So join us as we deep dive into the nitty gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. And get ready for no holds barred conversations because sometimes I have no filter. So if you are a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or just someone looking to up their marketing game, then I am so glad that you are here with us today. And I am so glad to have with me today the very awesome Oren Greenberg. So Oren, could you please give a quick introduction?
Sure. So I'm Oren. I'm a marketing advisor, sometimes fractional CMO, depending on how the mood strikes me. I've been in marketing 20 plus years, a lot of VC-backed businesses, and also working with some pretty large multinational companies, Canon, Lenovo, Investec Bank, British Telecom, etc. So, had to sprinkle some known brands in there. Yeah, nowadays I advise different SaaS businesses. I kind of niched into B2B SaaS, and most of my days are spent helping B2B marketing directors, heads of marketing with driving results, driving pipeline, and driving revenue growth in the business.
Fantastic. Thank you. An awesome background. So the title of this podcast that we decided on was Ctrl, Alt, and Declutter, which I love. And we chose this title because we had a little chat about the tools and tech stack in marketing. And the fact that I think sometimes there's that kind of more of a lack of integrated thinking, not integration between the tech, but integrated thinking. And lots of marketers have got themselves into situations, I think, where they're completely kind of drowning in tools and silos and just basically can't see the wood through the trees. So we're going to have a chat about how we break down those silos, what metrics that we need to focus on, and what path we need to prioritize, I suppose, just to ensure that we have the right tools that are going to support us moving forward. So let's start. Let's kind of get into the nitty gritty then. Start with the honest stuff. So have you ever had that moment where you looked at your marketing tech stack and thought, oh my God, like, how did it get this bad?
To be honest, no. But I'd say the closest I get is that I come into a business, I've inherited a marketing tech stack, and then I go, oh gosh, how the hell did it get this bad? So I obviously have a pristine tech stack. I'm quite particular, and I believe less is more in general, and it's about finding the right tools that work well with each other. Saying that, over the years, I've definitely fallen into the trap of complexification, where I've tried to build custom solutions to solve problems and ended up regretting it. And I've done that multiple times. So you'd think after like 5 or 6 times, but I kind of always go, oh, this can't do it. I'll just build something. Surely I should be able to do it better. Then you realize the world of data science and engineering and marketing operations is complex. And you kind of go, actually, there's a reason these tools have been around for so long. There's a reason they're so popular, and they've nailed a lot of these problems that people have.
Exactly. Why? So when you have been in that situation where you've gone into that organization and it is all a little bit of a Frankenstein monster of tools that don't talk to each other, like why do you think? What's your kind of analysis on that? Why do you think it's got to that stage?
Yeah, I reckon I think it's a two-part problem. It's a cultural problem. It's split in two. One is the way society is at the moment. And what we have is this overwhelm of Slack messages and WhatsApp and Facebook, etc., but email, and all of this overwhelm is creating this like, we need everything now, we need it quickly, we need it done. And in the company culture that's permeated, and that's there as well. This like we need to move quickly, get everything done. So you're like, I'm busy. I need a tool that helps me do this. I'm going to get this tool, implement it. You buy it, you implement it. You're like, actually, implementing it is hard.
Mm.
Learning to use it is hard. It doesn't really do the thing it says it's going to do. Like, I mean, HubSpot's a really great example, and I love HubSpot. All my clients use HubSpot. I had a partnership with them recently. I was going on one of the landing pages today on one of the solutions, and the first one was like, get more leads. And kind of like, but HubSpot doesn't help you get more leads, does it? It helps you automate and nurture the leads that you get. But the paid media budget on Google Ads or LinkedIn ads, yeah, there's reporting in HubSpot, but it doesn't help you actually, produce your creative, understand your ideal buyer persona. It doesn't really help you in a meaningful way drive and get more leads, does it? So it's interesting how, like, there's this promise of it's going to get you more leads, and then you build it and you're like, wait a second, I thought it's going to get me more leads, but now I understand it's not, doesn't really work like that. It's more like nurturing, and it's part of the getting me more leads. It doesn't achieve that objective. And then, a few months later go on and you're like, oh, yeah, you can't do this. You need this department. And then you need that department. And and then you're like, hey, Department A and Department B, you want to come in and we can clean and do this together? And they're like, no, thanks, I'm busy. You're like, yeah, but I can't utilize this really expensive piece of kit that I bought. They're
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, yeah, I feel for you. Anyway, bye. Catch you later. I got to go do my sales job, or I got to go build, like, go play World of Warcraft if they're a developer and engineer. So then you're like, okay, you're stuck with this Frankenstein, like tech stack, because you keep buying these solutions that are quite complex. They're not really as easy to use as you think. They're not as automatable as you'd like to hope. And they also don't solve all your problems. You end up trying to build all this kit. You end up with overlap between the different pieces of kit. And then you find out a lot of it actually has to integrate into your proprietary data system. And you need like your Snowflake integration, and you need your, CDP, customer data platform integration. And you're like, wait a second. And they don't play well nice with each other. This one doesn't have an integration. This one, I now have to go to engineering. It's secondary on the roadmap for the features of the product. And this is why it happens. It's and then you've got the pressure because you got to deliver the results. So you don't have the time to really learn to use the tool, deploy the tool effectively, and the tool doesn't do everything you need it to do. And then the tools don't play nice with each other, and a lot of them need to integrate into the business. So that, I'd say, is the most common pattern I've seen. There's a few other variants. I'd say that's probably the most, like really, I've seen this across so many businesses now. It's by far, I'd say, in the bell curve, like the number one.
It's really interesting that. Like, whose fault do you think that is? Is that the fault of the marketing person that's not really investing enough time into the platform that the tool that they've purchased, and or is it actually the tool's fault or the company provider's fault of the tool of not kind of taking you on that journey and doing their marketing job to sort of nurture and keep you?
Yes. Um, a good question. Whose fault do I think it is? I don't know about like the lens of which I see it. I don't see it as like someone's responsible and it's gone pear-shaped. I see that it's very complex out there. It's volatile, unpredictable. It's a VUCA, right? Ambiguous, and people are navigating this complexity, and it's that complexity is intensifying. Like suddenly you have AI, and you're like, okay, I need to get my head around that. And now you have AI agents, and now you need to get your head around that. And then you've got all this the underlying privacy law changes that you need to try and catch up with. So as a marketer, you're juggling so many different, and like every person's marketing function, unless you're like a hyper specialized role where you're just doing paid search or just doing paid social, you're a generalist. Most marketing functions are generalists. So it's just a symptom of the complexity of the world.
Hmm.
But would marketers running better due diligence before they buy software help? Yes. Would vendors being more honest and more helpful? Rather than a sales rep who made you other promises, passing you to customer success, hoping that now you're like, wait, but he said this and now you're saying that, and oh, I'm now in a 3-year contract. Oh, I didn't expect that. Um, to the culture in these businesses around short-term results and changing and adapting and investing in proper training. Because it'd be nice to like properly be trained to know how to use the tool, right? But that's budget. How are you going to get the budget? And I think there's a lot of other underlying issues as well beyond the MarTech. Like the business. How is the business performing as a whole? As a business performing compared to competitors? Like, if you're in a category that's competitive and the competitor raised 100 mil and you've raised 10 mil and they have 10x the market and you're expected to deliver the same output, volume and quality, and your C-level don't understand why you're not performing with only 10th of the budget. So you see, it's like suddenly you're like, oh, so now I understand why I get caught up in like having this Frankenstein, because I'm trying to buy the most expensive ABM software because everyone tells me it's amazing, and it's not quite right because I actually don't even have a content person and I don't actually have enough budget for driving distribution and traffic. And then there's a real case, business doing like 50 mil ARR, marketing team of 4, bought like one of the most expensive pieces of ABM kit. And then you're like, okay, how are you going to deploy it? Oh, we don't have enough budget now for distribution. We don't have enough budget for content creation. Like, what do you think this like tool is going to do? Magically print out leads for you? Like, how does that it's like a deep lack of knowledge. Because marketing is so fragmented, I think people underestimate there's like 24 core functions in marketing. It's like almost, I think, 880 different root job titles in marketing. It's like incredibly fragmented space. And because of fragmentation and complexity, people underestimate it, think it's simple, and then they think they're smart and capable, and they realize it's not about being smart and capable. It's like, you can't do an API integration if you're not a coder. And if you don't have access to the database, how are you going to do that? So it's like, it doesn't matter how smart and capable you are. If you don't have the keys to do it and you don't have the skills to do it, then you're going to get stuck in this situation.
It all comes back to strategy, I suppose, then, doesn't it? Like, what is it you're trying to achieve? And but I have this saying actually with my teams where I always say to them, like, break it first. So, if they're coming to me and saying to me, look, Lucy, I've seen this like really awesome tool. It's going to cost us, I don't know, like, a couple of $100 a month or whatever, or even it's going to cost us 50K or whatever. My answer is always the same. It's break what you've got first. So even if you're logging stuff in a spreadsheet and actually you can come to me and say, Lucy, this is taking me 10 hours a week to fill all these numbers in a spreadsheet. Okay, you've broken it. It's great. But yeah, just prove to me that you're broken. So thinking about that then, like in your mind, in your opinion, what is the difference between something that's kind of, is really helpful and adding value, or it is just like another tool to kind of like add in? Like where how do you decide the difference sort of between the two?
I think it always comes down to the due diligence you did in the buying of the tool, an assessment of what you're currently doing. Is it broken, like what you're currently doing? And also, what's the actual business case? Have you done the maths on what the key KPIs are actually going to be? And, I think a lot of people, they get pushback from like the CFOs. Like, the CFO doesn't understand marketing. And funny enough, most of the CFOs I've worked with, they're pretty clever and they understand business, and they go, okay, you can't quantify the impact. No. What's your expectation of quantifying the impact? And then the marketer kind of scratching their head going, I haven't thought about that. Okay, well, like, if you haven't modeled it, how do you know if you're going to achieve that result? And then you see this, like, as you start asking rigorous questions, you see there's very thin thinking. And I think there's like a lack of depth of thought that's happening with building the stack, thinking about how to reach the relevant audience, researching the audience and understanding them, positioning the business in the right way, nailing the right messages, deploying in the right channels. And you see, as you layer it, you're like, wait a second, marketing strategy is hard and it's complex and it's always changing as well, which makes it even harder. Then you need all these relatively static tools with static contracts to deploy against the moving landscape. So I don't think there's a solution for this other than I tell you what I think people are doing now and isn't working. I don't think asking for referral works very well. I see very often that it's been recommended and then the person implements and it's the wrong tool, because the referral context and that business's context were not the same. And the person requesting the referral didn't provide enough context to evaluate and understand if the referral is in the right place. So even though we instinctively as human beings we need trust with other people, I'd say referral is actually a broken mechanism for the most part, with tech stack and other parts of marketing, but no one is really comfortable admitting it. And if the truth is, it's because it's easy. Because going into a community and asking for a recommendation and having 7 people say something, then one of the names comes up 3 times and the second one came up twice, then you're going to go for the one with the 3 names because it came up more often. And that's like, oh, it was voted majority. But wait, are you trying to build something for average? Or are you trying to build something that's right for your business and your context? And then you kind of go, wait, actually, I'm not looking for average. I am looking for the right solution.
Yeah.
And it breaks. So I think there's like the mental heuristics humans have. We fall over, but we don't recognize it because we're not robots. But the heuristics, they fault us. Um, then it's unfortunate. So that I think doesn't work.
That's
Um,
really
yeah,
interesting. Because yeah, that's, I mean, I must admit that's kind of one of the first things I do. But it's partly because of the trust, and it's also, I'll be honest with you, that it's partly a little bit of laziness, if I'm
yes,
totally honest, because
yeah,
there's just so many tools out there, and what I like to know is, okay, well, what's working for you? You know, tell me what of all of those billions of tools, like, is really gonna give me the biggest chance of delivering the goals that I want to deliver. So
yeah.
yeah.
But like, think about it. Like, have you worked with an agency that has delivered to another business, but you brought them on and hasn't delivered?
Mm,
100%. Freelancer? 100%. Tech stack? 100%. So you go, how come I've personally had so many of these experiences now, and yet I'm following the same pattern? And the
yeah.
truth is, it's laziness.
Yeah.
Okay, why are we lazy? Because we're overwhelmed, and because the results and pressure to deliver short term is high, and we don't feel, and I think it is a feeling, I don't think it's a truth. We feel we don't have the privilege or option to run the due diligence properly. But it's very rare that I'll have a goal from a CEO that's ambitious and I'll go, it's not that I can't do this in the time frame, I can, but this might end up being a £500,000 mistake, or I can take another month or two to do it properly and I can mitigate the risk to 50K. It's rare that they say, yeah, no, just push it. 500K is not a lot of money. Just go ahead and pull the trigger, do it now quickly. I think very often they'll go, why? And then I'll walk them through it if it's a more rigorous CEO type. And then they understand the complexity and risk. And my job as a marketer, as a senior leader, is to think like a CFO. How do I mitigate risk? Because at the end of the day, my job is fundamentally resource allocation,
Mm,
one of the bases, amongst all the other key responsibilities. But that's a fundamental and probably the most pivotal part of being an effective leader, a marketing leader. So I think like a CFO, and CFOs think about risk. What's my opportunity cost? What's my alternative? And what's going to happen if I get the result? Or am I not going to get a result? What's a higher probability? And then I think, have I ever done this before? And if I haven't done it before, it's very likely it's going to be very high risk. It's going to fail. And as long as we're having that honest conversation and saying, look, I believe this is a way forward. I've not done this before. To be honest, it's a bit risky. These are the alternatives that I thought of. I don't think it's better. Do you have a better option? If not, let's go to risky. So as long as you take them through the business case and the thinking and you weigh it up and you show them how you're evaluating it, it tends to be surprisingly effective from my experience. But most of the time, we just want to say yes, I'm going to go do that, or yes, I have an idea, because most senior execs I know who are marketers, we're quick to execute, we're quick to deliver, we want to move things, we're ambitious and we're eager. We're not the most conscientious bunch, which is very rigorous with our due diligence and very cautious. You typically don't get to be a CMO if you're very on the fence all the time. You tend to get there because you're strong-minded and opinionated and direct and experienced and confident. And when you're tackling other C-level execs, if they smell insecurity or uncertainty, you typically don't get the budget and you don't get the confidence, right? So it's a hard game that senior marketers have to play, because what we're really doing is we're taking big risks and big punts on what we think needs to happen, but underneath it could be we're really uncertain. But you rarely do I talk to a CMO who's in a culture where you can be authentically vulnerable, when you can
yeah.
say, I'll be honest, I don't really know. And I believe from my experience, this tells me it's the right direction. And if you say it or appear this way, it's not fair. It doesn't taste well, does it? It's not favorable. It doesn't play well. People want like strong leadership, and unfortunately, I think we live in this, like, I'd call it like patriarchal legacy. I think it's a legacy of like this pseudo alpha male. And they did research in like monkey tribes, and they found that alpha male is actually like the most stressed out of everyone in the tribe. And why? Because they care so much about everyone in the tribe. It's
Yeah.
like, what a contrast to like pushing and forcing your way through. Two, I care so much. I'm stressed out. I care about everyone to make sure the tribe is healthy. We're doing everything right. So I think that we need, like, there's a need in society to change this paradigm around being aggressive. I think it's okay to be assertive, but not necessarily be aggressive, but be conscientious and diligent. And I think if we encourage more conscientiousness and diligence, it would be better off, everyone, like businesses and life work balance and results. I think it would all just be better. But I think there's a lot of cultural forces at play in businesses from what I've witnessed. But there's apples and oranges. Some businesses, they're very calm and slow and thoughtful. Others, they're VC backed.
I
And
love this is one of those kind of conversations I have quite frequently with marketing leaders, where they are going from that kind of head of marketing role into the CMO, the C-suite, or the joining a board, or being part of the management team for the first time, and you have to kind of take that marketing hat off for a minute and put your sort of leadership hat on, and then obviously building the relationship with all of the other senior execs, from the different functions, and understanding it from their side. And it's just a completely different kind of frame of mind, isn't it, and world. But I mean, I suppose in that situation, like, you've kind of got to almost like be a little bit kind of schizophrenic and kind of like argue with yourself, don't you? And do play the two roles of the marketing leader and then the business leader, the CMO, as well. But that's really interesting.
or you can create a persona of yourself in AI and use that to be a bit more efficient, which is what I do.
Another tool.
Yes, another tool.
Have
Yes,
that
but this
conversation.
one, this one is a strategic. It's a strategic amplifier rather than most tools, which are a tactical substitute. So I wouldn't put it in the same. It's still a tool, but it's in a different category of usefulness.
So when you going back to kind of your kind of plate of spaghetti with all of your tools sitting in front of you, if you had to, if you're in that situation, which it sounds like you was, or you have been quite a few times, where you've had to kind of zoom out and sort of take a look, to sort of get a sense of like what's working and what's not working, what's your kind of like go-to metric? Like, what are you looking for in there? What signals are you looking for that where something's working?
Mm. Depends what the tool is, because the marketing tech stack is so multi-layered. Um, if it's a tool that I'm deploying to people in the marketing team, I'm looking to see, are they using it and they actively using it or not? Is it being utilized? I'd say every tool has its own reasoning for why we brought it in. So we need to evaluate each tool respective of the metrics that it's built for. So depending on what the tool is, I'm just kind of going through my mind of all the different marketing tech stack tools, and there's quite a lot of them in terms of the different categories. A lot of them don't necessarily even have KPIs, right? Like
Mm.
a graphic design tool for creating images or something that sits in marketing on the P&L marketing. How do you evaluate the KPI on that number of design? Like, it's not that you couldn't do it. It's just like, would you really evaluate Canva versus Photoshop based on the number of images you're creating? Not necessarily, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's not everything in the marketing tech stack. I think it's the question of what's eating up 80% of your budget. Like, what's that 20% that's eating up the most, and being more rigorous with that rather than trying to optimize everything. So I think that's also very material. Um,
There's
I
also
think,
another
yeah, it's
one
very
which is you can
specific. Yeah.
there's also another way which I found quite effective, which is basically just to switch it off and see who moans. You can certainly tell straight that was a joke, by the way. I would never do that. But yeah, you could certainly tell who was using it, just who put their hand up first. But yeah, so okay, so having all of these tools is one thing, but getting them to kind of like talk to each other. I mean, this is the dream, right? Like, yeah, we have all of these tools, but they never talk to one another, and it's a kind of an absolute nightmare. So why is integration kind of like such a problem, do you
Yes.
think?
The CEO of Gecko Board, he had an interesting LinkedIn post. He said, we integrate into lots of tools, but some tools have taken up the majority of our roadmap in recent years, like Zendesk and HubSpot and a few others. And the reason is that integrating really well into the right tools is much more complex than people think. And then you realize that even though you're looking at API documentations and it's got hooks and it's got specific parameters, there's a translation gap between the core competence of the tool in terms of its front-end UX, the API documentation, the person who developed that within the context of the person using the tool, the front end, and then the developer who's pulling that data from the API, trying to understand, translate what the documentation means to the end user in the client company. So you've
Mm,
got a four-step process, and that depth of integration is what really matters. So, for example, I had a chat today with someone. They had an API model. It was Sonar. And I said, "Oh, you use Perplexity?" And he goes, "How do you know?" I was like, "It's Sonar. It's Perplexity." He goes, "Yeah." And I go, "That's funny. I was playing with the API recently, and it didn't have extended thinking." And he said, "No, they do." I was really? And when I tried it, it didn't work. And now he's saying they do it. So it's like my knowledge is not up to date on that specific tool. Like imagine how many tools I've got. I've got like 50, 60, 70 tools. Like how am I going to maintain being updated on the documentation and the API capability? And then whenever you play around with an API, you start hitting so many roadblocks with each API because of the way it's been engineered, because what people don't understand is your API is integrating to that business's most valuable IP. They're monetizing through selling you access. They need to be very particular about what data they're giving you, because that's sort of the premise of the whole business. So unless it's like all UX based. So when people develop the API, what was their thinking? Give them as much power and access as possible, or limit it as much as possible.
the
So
latter.
the latter. So what you end up is essentially technical jargon translation gaps between
Mm.
engineers and end users, not just necessarily marketers, but other end users, and the technical complexity of API integration. I think AI is going to transform this and make it far easier, where anyone can go into Replit or Bolt or any of these other no-code tools that are growing at an alarming rate and plug in the API documentation. And obviously this MCP protocol is going to help with this. And AI agents are going to help with this. And they're going to do all of this legwork. And then you're going to have AI agents talking to other AI agents about the limitations of those documentation, because trying to connect. And then the product managers and engineers in the core business are going to receive these reports that are really nice distilled by severity. And they're going to know what they need to implement to access. And the companies who don't do this are going to die. And the companies who are on top of getting faster feedback loops are going to thrive. So this is my hands-on personal experience and observation. Saying all of that, I'm not an SQL engineer, I'm not a data scientist, I'm not a coder. So I'm probably sounding quite authoritative about something I'm not a subject matter expert on. I'm just giving you anecdotal observation of my
Yeah.
analysis on what is an expert question.
I think it comes back to the kind of why are you integrating as well? Like always ask the kind of the why. And I've gone all Simon Sinek now, but I remember having this situation in a company before where HubSpot was our CRM marketing automation platform. And I wanted to get everything, I kind of get this complete picture in HubSpot of like everything. And so I was integrating kind of all of the tools that we had. And I came across the problem that you just described, where a couple of the integrations I had were pulling in parts of the data and not all of it. So then I didn't have the integration. Then I had to go and get some additional engineering, outsourced like engineer to come and kind of build some. Anyway, it was a nightmare. But I kind of then got myself into this onto this journey, or whatever you want to call it, where I was just literally trying to integrate everything for the sake of it, because I just had in my head I needed this kind of like one picture, but most of it I didn't need. There was just a bunch of, do you know what I mean? Like there was a bunch of stuff that I didn't really need, kind of that was being integrated. And yeah, long story short, I think it kind of scared me a little bit, but it made me realize about the going back to the why piece. Sit down with a piece of paper or whatever, digitally, however you work, and kind of say, well, what is that report, or what's that answer or goal or whatever, that metric that I really need to understand. Then kind of do your little diagram of, okay, well, what data points do I need coming into that? What data points? Don't say what systems do I need integrated. Say what data points do I need? Then you can eventually work backwards and you get to the integrations of the systems, right? Did that make sense?
Yeah, I think when you don't have a clear plan and then you see all the API documentation, your natural propensity is to want to make the most out of it. So you want to understand all of it, and then you didn't realize you're in a rabbit hole that's moved you away from your original objective. And then it's like zooming in, zooming out, and get lost in that zooming. So what you're describing is sensible. I think you just need to have a documented plan of what you're trying to do, and then you go and play with the API and you reference a document, and then you're done.
Yeah, exactly. So if you was thinking about that kind of plan, then if you was building, or you did have the opportunity to build your kind of marketing tech stack from scratch, like from the start now, like how would you approach it? What are those tools that you would say are kind of the must-haves, from what you've sort of seen that's working, and what are those tools, the must-haves that you've seen like working together, that you have seen successfully integrated?
Yeah, I can't answer that question because it's client specific. So if a client has Salesforce, another one has HubSpot, I'm limited by the tech stack that they have and the tools that I choose to implement. So I obviously have my trusted go-tos in a few different areas that integrate more commonly. I think it's always better to pick a tool that one's familiar with than take a punt on an unknown tool because it's got a good brand or it's familiar, it's doing the rounds. I can spit out a few names of tools recently that I really like. I don't think this is me. I know people love tools, so I'm just going to do it for the people who are listening who love tools, because the truth is this is meaningless.
I
Because
can almost
it's
feel
like,
it from the listeners going, just give me some really good
yeah,
tools.
just give me some tools that you like. And it's like, it doesn't, it's like, yeah, it's like, which car do you like? It's like, why does it matter what car I like? Why don't you go car shopping, find the car that you like? So it's like, saying that, I like Copy AI. I think a lot of people don't understand why it's great, and it's got some really great value. It's got value to it for some functions, specific things that sometimes I want to do. I play around a lot with Clay.com. A
I like
recent
it.
favorite, recent favorite of mine is Evergrowth.com for hyper-specific personalization. Think about other recent tools that I've been playing with. A lot of my clients, they like Notion. I like Notion.
Mm.
Um, which category? I definitely prefer HubSpot over Salesforce. It's really interesting when it comes to Salesforce. I remember I was interviewing marketers. One of the question is which piece of MarTech software is overrated? So it's quite a high level question, but I think it's indicative of how much experience a marketer has based on the response that they give. Like, are they choosing something very obscure or something that is quite common and familiar because they're very, with more experience, you're going to go for like a more familiar brand. And then the most common answer was always Salesforce. So I thought that was quite funny.
Do you know what my
The,
answer is to that?
Mhm.
All of them.
Your
All
answer
of
to all of
To
them are
that
what?
question as to which like kind of marketing tool or whatever is sort of overrated, I'll be honest, all of them. But I tell you why, because they all say that they can do 100 things, but actually the majority of the people need 5 of those 100 things.
Yes.
and they market the 95 things and they forget the 5. And it's like, that kind of, I remember someone telling me the story about the consumption gap. And like when you have kind of a SaaS tool, for example, you get the SaaS tool uh to 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 um to do something that you need it to do right now, to solve a problem right now. But actually, over time, there are other tools that you start to kind of use that solve part of that problem. And if they're doing more than that original problem, then actually the need for that original tool goes away because you've got all these other
Mm.
tools that are kind of
Yeah.
solving. So what that tool needs to do all the time is to constantly be upselling, I suppose, to you,
Mhm.
to fill that consumption gap all the time. And that's what I find, that's where the overratedness comes from, because I find that a lot of the tools like don't do that. Like they don't kind of nurture you, or to tell you that all of this other stuff is available. It's yeah.
I think they do. I think we ignore it. We ignore the intercom pop-ups. We ignore the emails. And you kind of go,
Yeah,
why? Because we have so many tools and we're so overwhelmed with all the other sorts of
yeah,
information.
good
And
point.
right now, in the context of our current lens, that new feature is not relevant to the problem I have right now. So it's great to learn about all these tools for all these problems, but there's more tools and more problems than we can contain and retain
Yes,
at any given
exactly.
time. So we just filter it out. But if you think about it, I think it's very interesting looking at SaaS pricing pages. Because when you look at how many of them bundle lots of features with fixed pricing, but you know you don't need half,
Yeah,
but you know that you can't get them to give you just a few of those features for a specific price. And it's part of how they make money. And it's part of how buyers believe that if they buy the features, they can make use of them.
yeah,
And that is where the frustration starts to build. So I bought this at this price point. I only need 5, but I had 15. Can we make more use of it?
yeah,
And I think so. I think there's a few issues there around like how hard it is to adopt it, building the habit around adoption, the training required to utilize it, utilizing it consistently, making enough use of it relative to the price point. And to be honest, we kind of get bored probably. We use the tool, we go in, we set up an email marketing campaign. Okay, you've done that 500 times now. How much like you're going to set up another email marketing? You know you should, but then you're like, oh, we're late to our target. We don't have enough SQLs or enough like opportunities in the pipeline. Let's go launch an email marketing campaign. Suddenly you're like back into the tool. And then you realize it's like we just can't within the context of everything that we want to be doing. We don't have enough bandwidth mentally and emotionally and energetically to do it, even though we're ambitious and we see the potential. So I think there's a lot of issues at play as to why it's quite tricky, all of this utilization of features and the evolution. But obviously we do know that there are businesses that go under because of new tools. There's new tools that evolve and do a better job. Like I think a great example is like, back in the day was like Camtasia, and everyone's using Camtasia back in the day.
yes.
I
Oh my
can't remember
goodness,
how many years.
yeah.
Yeah, you remember this? Yeah, suddenly everyone's like, oh yeah, unless you're too young to know what I'm talking about. And then now, if you kind of go, what's the new Camtasia? It's a Loom, but
Yeah,
like the only difference between Loom and Camtasia was a Chrome plugin.
yeah,
Fundamentally, it's that exact same functionality. And then there's lots of other Loom variants now, like a Vidyard or like I think it's a Wistia. They're like, oh, that's interesting. It's like all very specific, like niche use cases for the same basic technology for different personas and different ideal customer profiles. Um, so
but
it's like there's
that goes back
nichification.
to the kind of the consumption gap that I was kind of talking about.
Yes.
If kind of Camtasia had continued to kind of fill that, then
Mm.
you could argue that maybe
Yeah.
the others wouldn't have taken over. But
Yes.
yeah. We're just coming up to time now. I could talk to you forever on this. So it's so interesting. Thank you. We have a little tradition on this podcast that what I do is I ask my network, if you had a marketing leader standing in front of you right now, what is that one burning question that you would ask them? Um, so I have a bunch of questions. They're all random. They don't know that I'm asking you, or it could be anyone. So I'm going to ask you the question if you don't mind. And this one is, um, well, okay, you've got an easy one actually. What is your favorite brand at the moment and why?
Favorite brand.
What are
I
you
don't,
seeing a lot of at the
I
moment? What
don't,
do you think?
I'm not, I don't have, trying to think of brands that I have an emotional attachment to.
It's,
So
well, we're quite harsh as
so my
most marketers, aren't we? I think.
yeah, so my thinking process was this is my so I just reveal my thinking process until I get to an answer, so indulge me. My thinking was, oh, I don't feel an emotional connection to a brand. I was like, why is that? And it's like in my mind, a brand is a false wrapper around people, but people come and go. So like if the
Yeah.
CEO of Google changes, does that change my sentiment towards Google? Like, so if I took all of the employees in Google and replaced them, it's like the old ship analogy of like, what is a ship? And it's a Sapir-Whorf thing in linguistics about the components in a cup language, and we think in general wrappers. So then a brand is a representation of a sort of standard, right? So I think of like, a Michelin rated restaurant, I think of McDonald's, and obviously McDonald's, I hold it in much lower stead because of quality standard. But obviously, McDonald's has produced predictability in everything they produce, which is why they're a brand. So I think about this I'm kind of going through this is my thinking process. And I was thinking, like, surely I have an emotional attachment to a brand. So I was going through the brands I even mentioned earlier, and I didn't feel a strong attachment to them. So I was thinking, like, what is a brand in my day to day that I actively use that I do actually feel strongly about?
Yeah.
And the most obvious answer that comes to mind was Apple. And
Mm.
I was thinking, why? And I was thinking about this thing around hearing aids. So I don't know if you know this, but hearing aids is essentially like a megaphone. Now, hearing is very complex. So you can hear a sound, but the sound can mean lots of different things unless it's within context. But the hearing aid doesn't know what the context is, so it doesn't know which sound to amplify. But AI, the theory is AI will allow hearing aids to be much better, and hearing aids are quite poor. So I remember thinking, like, it's such a shame that Apple hasn't produced hearing aids. And the thinking was, every product that I've used of Apple is superior to any other product
Yeah.
of the same ilk.
Yeah.
Earphones, phones, computers, it's just superior. So I guess I have a emotional skew towards Apple and a belief that the quality of production of their products is superior to every other. And it's the only company I can think of that consistently produces incredible products. So like, okay, what do you mean? Think about Google. Like I use so many of Google's products, but like how many products of theirs have I used that have gone to shit? Like, was it GChat? Was it when you're chatting? I can't remember. Google, was it Google Plus? What was it called? Circles? Do you remember?
No, no.
Yeah, no
I've
one.
never really been a
Yeah,
Google person. Sorry.
yeah. So I'm a Google person as well. So I like a lot of their products. I'd say incredible engineering, but they're just not as usable and they're not as good. And even though I love a lot of Google's products and I use so many of them, I can't put them in the same category as Apple because they're not as
No.
user-centric. Google's about engineering and tech, and Apple's always been about the best user experience. So as I started thinking about brands, I think Apple's probably the most obvious answer that comes to mind. It's a bit of a disappointing answer. I was hoping for something a bit more niche, but there we go. We don't have enough time for me to go rummage through this black box to try and
No,
pull something
that's
more
fine. It's a
interesting out.
really good, yeah, but as long as there's a story behind it, which is was an amazing story, what you said, and it's really funny. If you would have been a fly on the wall in my household last weekend, I was having a proper fit at my husband because he's still on a Windows laptop. And I converted. I'm a bit old school, but only converted to a Mac. I think it was about 5 years ago, and I literally cannot use like Windows laptops now. I
Yeah,
was trying to use his laptop. He couldn't get it like something working. I couldn't, and I was, will you just bloody buy a Mac for God's sake? So I'm with you on that. Like I'm sold, even though it's so much more expensive. And
yeah,
for what really? Like you're not getting much more. Like you're not getting more tech, are you, out of it? But just the slickness and the ease of use and the integration, going back to
yeah,
our
the integration.
conversation
Yeah,
between everything. Yeah, I love it. I'm with you. Thank you very much. Like I said, I could have chat to you for hours. So how can people reach you if they want to have a further chat?
sure. So if you're a B2B marketer and you're interested in AI, I've got an AI community. So ping me a message and you can join. And yeah, feel free to follow on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect up. Yeah, it's probably the best way.
Awesome. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Oren.
A
Thanks.
real pleasure.
Bye
Thanks
bye.
for having me.